Coming up today on the Locked On Hornets podcast, we play the what if game. What if the Hornets win 20 games, 30 games, dare I say even 40 games? What does that mean happened over the course of that season? And what does that mean will happen after they win said amount of games? We'll discuss all those scenarios today. Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. And that includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Also a producer on Yahoo Sports Daily with Jason Fitz and Caroline Fenton. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. And finally, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. We always appreciate FanDuel. We got a new game. No, it's not Who Wore It Best. We're going to toy with not finishing it. That's a thing that might happen. Hornets Media Day. Monday, Doug, by the way. Monday is Hornets Media Day. So that means the season is just around the corner. Right before they start training camp, we'll get all the skinny on what happened this offseason, what we can expect. Charles Lee, a whole bunch of people going to be speaking there. But anyways, still, we got to get to Who Wore It Best. Will we? I don't know. We have another game that we would like to play instead of the previous game that we've been playing for 3 years. Explain it, Doug. What you got for us today?
A very simple game. Just want to do a little prediction, but of a different variety, predicting what would need to happen, and then maybe even a step further, what would happen if the Hornets win a certain number of games. And I have it. We can either do 20, 35, 40. We can do 20, 30, 40. However you want to tier this. I don't know that there's maybe this is a discussion. Is there a huge difference between 30 wins and 35 wins? But I think like 20 wins because they won 19 last year, so it's essentially the same. And then 40 wins, I think being what would just be the crazy ceiling for this team. And then something in between. So that's what I want to do. What would have to happen for that to happen? And then what will happen if that happens?
Yeah, so if you go to some of the 30-win teams, Toronto was 30-52 last year. Miami Heat, they were 37-45. And Miami got into the play-in. So 35 seems a little more indicative of what you can expect for a team that gets to the play-in tournament. It's been a while. It's been a while since you were able to play it. So if we go 20, 35, and then, I don't know, I guess 40 is right. Yeah. So I like it. I like what you have in the bullet point. 20, 35, 40. I think that makes sense, with 35 really being a nice marker of you either got in the play-in or you didn't.
Okay, here's the big question. Do you want to start ceiling or floor?
Is 35 or 40 ceiling or floor? What was your question again? Say it one more time.
40 would be ceiling. Do you want to start the discussion at ceiling, go down to floor, or do you want to start on the floor and go to the ceiling? How do you build a house? You typically build a house from the floor up.
Yeah.
So
that's what you do. Let's go from the floor all the way to the top. You lead us off here, Doug. What would happen if the Hornets only won 20 games this upcoming season?
What would have to happen for that to happen? I would say the easy answer would be more injuries, not even necessarily to LaMelo Ball, but to 3 or 4 starter level players missing more than half of a season. So you're talking about Brandon Miller being injured again. It seems like Miles Bridges, who has been the Hornets Iron Man, I don't want to say he's due, but certainly that would be devastating to them because he is somebody that has been very impactful for them over the past couple of seasons. Colin Sexton, some of these guys that they've either slated for starting roles or maybe big 6-man roles. Trey Mann, maybe the back is really not the same, or there's another re-injury. Again, don't want any of this to happen, but we just simply have to prepare ourselves because of past precedent. And so I think it starts with injuries, but I think it goes even further than that. I think LaMelo Ball doesn't progress. Brandon Miller doesn't come in stronger and able to drive to the rim. There's just a lack of player development, particularly from the key guys. Con Knippel, not really ready for prime time necessarily, not ready for big minutes. He needs a little bit of development. So, I think all of those things would have to really kind of coalesce, combine to only have a 1-win improvement.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 19 wins. My God. So I guess it's not worst case scenario because they won less than 20 games last year, but it's pretty close to worst case scenario. With this roster, it would be worst case scenario. So let's just start there. Yeah, you're right. Easy thing to point to, injuries. They suffered a lot of injuries last year. They suffered injuries to guys that we thought were in line to win something, possibly at the end of the year. Sixth man of the year, sixth man, MANN. Trey Mann only plays 13 games. Brandon Miller, could he be an all-star? Conversations we were having last year. Problem is we got to copy and paste those topics to this offseason because we only got 27 games from him. So the injuries, for sure. How does it look if the Hornets only win around 20 games and they have average injury luck? I think the average injury luck, the injury would have to come to LaMelo. But the other thing is, Colin Sexton just can't play well with others. I don't think this is going to happen, by the way. But I think Colin Sexton just would not be able to play well with others. I think because of that, it's not even just Colin Sexton. I just point to him because he's the big addition this offseason. But it would be Trey, Colin, LaMelo, like all the guards maybe not being able to play alongside one another with LaMelo being injured, I guess, in this scenario. It would mean my man, Musa, just couldn't get it done. And that means Mason Plumlee, who I don't know if I have much faith anyway in Mason playing a ton of minutes, but that means Mason, Ryan Kalkbrenner just wasn't ready. He tried to shoot a few times, Doug, but he only shot 25% from three. I'll say this. The more fascinating discussion to me is what happens if they only win 20 games. If they have
hold on, let me pause you there before we get too far because I have some thoughts on that as well. I want to throw a couple of other things into the what could happen that would cause them to only win one more game. They've built this team clearly to score a lot of points, and they've also built this team clearly to not be able to stop the other team. Just when you look at what the skill set is, if everybody gives max effort, maybe they can punch above their weight a little bit. But there are going to be some nights when they give up a lot of points. And so I think the way that they could get to 20 without a ton of injuries is if the offense, and this goes to your Colin Sexton thing a little bit, if the offense just doesn't gel, if it becomes, if LaMelo looks around, guys aren't hitting shots again, and he starts to take it upon himself to score. We saw that. It allowed his stats to go all-star level. Maybe not great for the team, but he didn't have any other option, really. I mean, we talked about that a ton last season. That could repeat itself. Ultimately, if the Hornets get off to a horrific start, for whatever reason, you could very well see this team pivot into some kind of trade scenarios towards the trade deadline, the All-Star break, that could then put them in position to win 20 games. But they would have to be off to a bad start because I think this team would want to improve their record and win this coming season. They're starting to telegraph that a little bit, that this is not going to be completely about development, draft picks, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, I mean, some serious things would have to go wrong. The center position being such a weakness, if it were to show itself, as you mentioned there with Musa and Mason, you could see some things happen there that could send them towards the 20-win territory.
Yeah, I would say even still, it has to be injuries. That's what brings you down to this type of win total because it's been bad. The last 3 seasons for the Hornets, you're looking at 19 wins, 21, 27. Those are the amount of wins that you've had each of the last 3 years. What's happened each of the last 3 years? Like a pretty devastating total of injuries, a devastating amount of injuries. So that's what has to happen here. We can. I try to push that to the side to have a little more interesting conversation than the one we're all too used to having. But ultimately, Doug, it's that. It's guys can't stay healthy and everything else just can't coalesce on the court with one another. That's how it has to happen.
Now, to your more interesting conversation, what would happen if they won 20 games?
Yeah.
I would say if injuries were not the major factor, even if they were just a little bit of a factor, but not the major factor, I think you would have to consider a full roster overhaul that included a LaMelo Ball trade, that included a Miles Bridges trade, that really maybe what they started to do this past offseason with the bench would then extend more into the starting lineup, and you would have a full roster overhaul. And honestly, if the injury situation did revolve around LaMelo Ball, I think you would have to start that conversation as well. And then I'd also say, if injuries were not the major factor, I wouldn't expect Charles Lee to get fired, but I would expect that seat to suddenly be a lot warmer than it is going into this season.
Yeah, here we go again with the coaching conversation of he's bad. No, he's really not all that bad. He just doesn't have enough talent. No, he's really bad. Guys, he's playing G Leaguers. And eventually the Hornets fire him because that's the easiest thing to do. So all it takes is trading one specific player to signal a completely different direction, and that's trading LaMelo. The problem is you're in pretty dire straits at that point because now LaMelo is being traded because of injuries. If you're trading him because of injuries, that means you're not going to get 100 cents on the talent, 100 cents on the dollar. So now you had your chance, if you wanted to trade LaMelo. I think it's the right bet to stick with him with this type of offseason, bringing in Colin Sexton, bringing in Trey Mann, trying to go all in on offense, giving him adequate enough talent. So I think they did the thing you should do if you're going to hold on to him. But injuries, we've suffered them 3 straight years. So if LaMelo has more ankle injuries or whatever, that means you're trading him, and you're probably trading for assets rather than win now players. Maybe there's a reclamation project in there somewhere or a younger player that's somewhat tantalizing. But really, Doug, what is that? Like 2 firsts? If somebody's really willing to take a risk? Because I don't think the Hornets would do it for anything less than at least 2 firsts. I wouldn't. Like at that point, it's just, well, all right, we should just keep LaMelo then. So 2 firsts and something else. But even still, that's your absolute bottom dollar to trade him. And I'm still feeling somewhat underwhelmed because of what LaMelo is as a talent and what he was supposed to be. So, yeah, 20 wins, that signals a different direction you're taking. You're trading Miles as well, like for sure. Those are the 2 guys. And you're not getting as much back as you would have wanted to in a previous LaMelo trade scenario. And we're pretty depressed on this podcast once more in the second half of the season.
Yeah, what would happen? I don't know that we would do this podcast. If they won 20 games, we would start to consider our own future at that point. Just kidding. We can never leave. We're too sick. All right. I don't want to start this conversation now. I want to do it after we take a pause. But before we get to 35 and 40, Walker, I want to know from you, what number between 20 and 35, what's the cutoff line where you're like not considering any kind of seat warming to be happening, or you think any kind of talk about Charles Lee needs to be dispatched if they get to what number between 20 and 35? Don't answer yet, because I want to know your reasoning.
Almost did. Almost did. You got me. All right. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
The number I choose is, got you again. No, you gotta wait. You gotta wait. Coming up next segment, I'll tell you the number that Charles Lee needs to reach in order to avoid the hot seat. And then we'll talk about 35 win scenarios. Dare I say again, even 40 win scenarios. Coming up next, LOH. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives, and if you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code Locked On NBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. What number does Charles Lee have to reach in order to avoid the hot seat? I would say 30, straight up, 3-0, because that would be the most amount of wins the Hornets have had in the last 4 years at that point. I just went through the win totals each of the last 3. They won 19 games in Charles Lee's debut. They won 21 games in Steve Clifford's second year. They won 27 second year. You get the idea. Second year, second tenure. And they won 27 games under Clifford in his second tenure debut. They won 43 in James Borrego's last year. So I think you got to get to 30 at least. It feels like a different space. It's a different neighborhood. You moved houses and it feels like it's a little nicer. Sure, it's not your forever home, but it's your first time home with Charles Lee. Like it's nice enough. You're proud of it. Parents came by and they helped you set up a few things, but you'll be fine in like 5 years or so. Maybe that's too long, but you get the idea. It's not your forever home. Different neighborhood, different space, different vibes. I don't think we'd be looking to fire Charles Lee in that moment.
You move to the suburb where everyone knows you can get a good deal on a house. That's what happened. You moved way away from the city, so you get a good deal. The interest rates came down a little bit, and you snagged it.
I think 30 wins is like Mount Holly.
Okay.
I like Mount Holly. I like Mount Holly right now. I know a decent amount of people that live there, and it's their forever home, and that's okay. That's okay. I like Mount Holly, but like I also know a bunch of people that moved there so they can come back to the city once they start making more money. And I think 30 wins is Mount Holly.
That must make 40 wins Gastonia, obviously.
Of course, the gateway to Charlotte. That's what it is. I like Mount Holly. I got plenty of people out there. Shout out to my people in Mount Holly. What else you got?
Mount Holly's great. All the love in the world for Mount Holly. So let me give you my number. I've got a couple of numbers. Let me just first say, unless he makes the play-in, he's not going to completely avoid, because I'm thinking about your text line on WFNZ. He's not going to completely avoid any of that talk from anybody unless they get to the play-in, unless there's some actual postseason action. And then if they get smoked in that play-in game for a third consecutive play-in appearance, that he still won't avoid it. But if he gets to the play-in, at least for a day or two, he will avoid it. But for you, I'm just really talking about you and I. When would we not, have to hoist that flag of like, all right, well, we got to talk about this now. And to me, it's not quite 30. I'm going to say 29, only because I want the round number of 10. I think 10, because for some reason, and it makes no sense, right? 11 wins, 10 wins. What's the big difference? There really is none, but there's a huge difference between 10 wins and 9 wins. You know why? Because everyone on TV can say, Charles Lee led the Charlotte Hornets to a double-digit win improvement. And if he does 9 wins, nobody's saying that. So I do think that weirdly 29 is going to be a special number for the Charlotte Hornets if Charles Lee can lead this team to a double-digit win improvement.
That's spoken like a man who covered the James Borrego era. Everybody loved saying, why did they fire Borrego? All he did was improve 10 wins each of the last couple of years that he was there.
People love that. It'll chase off the scaries for a little while, but it won't chase them off forever. And I will say, if Borrego had 10 pillars, he might still have a job today. 4 doesn't mean anything. 3 means something weirdly in our culture. 10, 5 kind of means something, but 10's the number. 10's a winner. Tenner.
35. We've moved on from 20. We even took a little bit of a pit stop in between 20 and 35. 29. 29 as well. What about 31, Doug? Let's go through the 31 win scenario. 35. 35, that's play-in territory. So you kind of touched on it there, but just to put it in perspective, last year you had the Miami Heat reach the play-in. They were 37-45. The year before that, in 2023-2024, the Atlanta Hawks were the last team in the play-in tournament. They won 36 games. So let's just say in a weaker Eastern Conference, no Tyrese Halliburton for the Pacers, stronger Orlando, who knows, right? 35, now you're in play-in territory. What does it mean if the Hornets get to that spot?
Really, I think it means 2 things and 2 things only. One, that LaMelo Ball plays 70-plus games. and one of your bench additions, Con Knipple, Trey Mann, Colin Sexton, maybe a healthy Grant Williams, although I think it's one of the other three guys that I just mentioned. One of those guys hits, and for some period of time is in sixth man of the year. Someone's in a most improved player conversation. And honestly, if Brandon Miller breaks out, well, I'll save that because to me, that's the thing that gets him to 40. So the thing that gets him to 35, I just think, particularly again, I think they're just going to have to outscore folks. So it has to be LaMelo Ball. His 3-point shooting improved significantly from last season, and he plays 70-plus games, plus one of the bench guys just rejuvenates their career, or Con Knipple, sneaks into some like hipster rookie of the year conversations. Like any combination of two of those, well, LaMelo Ball has to, but any combination of one of those other things happening, I think gets you to 35.
I think if they win 35 games, then their vision this offseason was successful. They took a step in the right direction. They're flirting with the play-in, not playoff. It's very different. They're flirting with the play-in spot. They leaned all the way into offense. I think it probably happened. If they got to 35 games, they probably scored a boatload of points, and their defense wasn't very good. It was good enough for them to be in postseason basketball contention, but defense still probably wasn't very good. It means that the Eastern Conference also isn't great, which I think is going to bear to be true this upcoming season. And Colin Sexton probably gave you very similar numbers to what he did last year. I think Trey Mann on a 50-game sample probably gave you decent to similar numbers to what he did in that 13-game sample. Maybe not. Maybe even less than that, because if he plays like that, then yeah, now we're starting to get ahead of that 40 stuff. But really, the best way to put it here, Doug, is if they win 35 games, I think they accomplished what they set out to do this past offseason, and they pretty much reached it, no more, no less. They pretty much hit it right on the head.
Yeah, Atlanta is a fraud. That would have to, one of these teams that seems to be on the rise would have to fraud out, like the Atlanta Hawks.
You think so
Giannis,
here? You think so here at 35, there would have to be some fraud teams? Like
you'd have to have a team. I think you'd have to have a team drop. Yeah, you'd have to have one.
The reason I ask is because Indiana is going to come down. So, Atlanta, if they move up.
I don't think they're going to drop. I don't think they're going to drop all the way out. I mean, they got a lot. Okay. I know it's Tyrese, but no, also we kept screaming before the playoffs, before they went on the playoff run. All we would talk about with the Indiana Pacers is like, I think they might be a little bit better when Tyrese is off the floor. Like we would have those discussions. So I think they've got enough to hang in there. I think Detroit's going to move. So then you're talking Atlanta, Chicago, Milwaukee, if they trade Giannis. Orlando looks strong. Philadelphia, that's a teeter-totter of injury and old. Miami with the hero injury, that's already moving in the right direction for the Hornets.
Right.
I think one team at least that we think would be in the play-in now would have to fall out to make room for the Charlotte Hornets for sure. Maybe two teams.
Okay. So 35, there's not, is that the least interesting conversation outcome? There's still interesting conversations there. I'm just saying 20 wins, we're blowing it up. 40, we'll save it, but 40, we are riding high. 30, I guess in the true sense of this being the middle number, it does feel like it's an appropriate number where we're probably having the least interesting conversations at the end of the year.
Yeah, there's not really a conversation to be had. I would be curious, what's the roadmap for this team to get into the play-in and not get smoked? Because if Steve Clifford were not working for the Phoenix Suns and made himself available for this podcast, he would remind us immediately that it's one thing to make the play-in, and you can do that by playing all offense, all gas, no breaks, no defense. You can get there by outscoring people. But once you get there and things tighten up, that's when you really the odds of you getting embarrassed increase significantly. And I mean, there were extremely competitive defensive play-in games this past postseason. So it continues. It gets more physical. So who would need to increase their physicality? Who would need to be healthy? Who would need to be on fire from three to allow them to even be competitive in a play-in game. I don't even know if that's a conversation. It'll just be something interesting to monitor as we go through the season.
All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
How do we flirt with 500? What happens? What has to happen for the Hornets to flirt with 500? We get to that coming up next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. Yeah, I jumped in right before the Panthers game. Like, it wasn't live, but I did jump in, and you know what? I'm going to the game, home opener, feeling a little froggy. Let's put the over on T-Mac receiving yards, the over on Kyle Pitts receiving yards. Anytime touchdown for Kyle Pitts, why not? Bryce Young over rushing yards, sure. I didn't win a single leg, but that's me.
If you'd have just taken the money line, you could probably have retired.
It was a decent payout, but that's me. Don't be like me. Be like me in using FanDuel. Don't be like me and actually win when you put money down on FanDuel. And there are so many different ways to bet. It's quick. It's easy. It's the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. And there was still a lot of energy for me, even if I did lose, because it was so much fun with FanDuel and the Panthers won, baby. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Ooh, buddy, I was feeling real froggy right before the game. I thought it was cake, too. Like, Bryce Young, rushing yards, 13? Yeah, he'll get that. He got very close. Everybody was close, but nobody passed the goal line. So, anyways, I hope the Hornets do. I hope the Hornets reach the end zone, so to speak. 40 wins would be that, and then some. That would be like, not to make any jokes, man, but it would feel damn near like winning the Super Bowl around here to have that kind of leap, because 40 wins would mean more hope towards the future, because all these guys that would help you get to 40, they would either be contractually locked in, or you have so much flexibility to move off of the guys that you would want to move off of. Colin Sexton, even if he's not going to be on the books the next season, that's still free money for you to spend on another free agent. That's a lot of money. So if they get to 40 wins, like just the result of that, yeah, we're going to be having some awesome conversations at the end of that. What has to happen? So I don't think the easy answer is that LaMelo, like, I don't want to give you the every perfect scenario has to happen. Musa is awesome. LaMelo's all NBA. Brandon's all-star. I don't think we have to hit on everything, Doug. I don't think you have to hit on every single one of those happenings. I think what happens for me is LaMelo plays very similarly to what he did his second year in the league. Higher volume, but efficiency numbers are very close to what he was when he was an all-star. 39% from three, around 43% from the field, dishing it out at a higher rate. Other guys are scoring alongside him. I think Trey Mann and Colin Sexton are just awesome off of the bench in terms of being those spark plugs that give you baseline efficiency, but are just really hard to guard, which I can easily imagine. And I think Brandon Miller, his efficiency goes way up. I don't know if he'll have to be an all-star, because I don't know if media would vote him in with only, quote-unquote, a 40-win team. Like, you know how they get weird. I don't want to give the Hornets 2 all-stars if they've only won 40 games and they're, teetering in and out of the play-in. But I think Brandon would have to play pretty close to it. And I do think Musa just flat out works baseline for what you need. He's just fine. Ryan Kalkbrenner shows you a little something here and there in rim protection scenarios. Like, I guess what I'm trying to differentiate here is I think most people might say, yeah, everything has to hit at its 100th percentile outcome. And I don't think that's true. I think a lot of stuff has to hit in the 75th to 85th percentile outcome. But I don't think everything has to hit in the 100th percentile.
I think the one thing that has to hit is that LaMelo Ball has to make an all-star game, like, no question. Like, no media keeping him out. He has to play at a similar offensive level with a little bit more discipline and a continued improvement, really any improvement on the defensive end of the floor, that I think that would lift him above, and because the Hornets would win, I think in that scenario with some of the other improvements that they've made to the roster, the Hornets would win, and the media would not have an excuse to take it away from LaMelo Ball with the gaudy stats. Okay, so I think he has to be a shoe-in all-star. I think you do have to see some kind of breakout from Brandon Miller. I think everybody has to shoot well that is supposed to shoot well, and maybe even one guy that, I mean, you think back to that season when Borrego took them to the play-in and they won 40-plus games, and there were a few guys that was like, oh yeah, they boosted a little bit from what they were, but they were supposed to shoot well. And then you had a few guys that was like, okay, wow, all right, I did not expect that from you. So yeah, I think some of that has to happen to get to 40. I'm going to say too that they have to get, and I don't know what the exact number of wins would be. I haven't gamed that out of my head, but they would have to get to the All-Star break with, I mean, at 500, above, somewhere like teetering above 500 perhaps, to give the franchise the push that they would need to say, all right, we are going for it. And I would say too, unless everything did go right, I think you would need to make some sort of adjustment at the deadline to fix your center position to make sure down the stretch run you could pick up the wins that you needed to get all the way to 40. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a lot of things going right, and to make that big of an improvement, again, we're talking about almost as big, if not bigger, win improvement than we saw from Detroit. And what did that require? That required Cade Cunningham making a huge leap and staying healthy. And we're whispering about him being future, fifth in the MVP vote. I mean, that's how serious people were about Cade Cunningham. And it was just a lot of people locking in, and so, yeah, I think that those are the same kinds of things that you're going to have to see from the Charlotte Hornets to make that big of a leap.
Couple more points. I like the Detroit comparison because you're right. It would be a monster leap for the Hornets, just like it was for Detroit. With Detroit, I don't think everything hit at the 100th percentile outcome for them. For instance, Jaden Ivey did not play the entire year,
hurt,
and yet they still took a monster leap. I think there's still meat on the bone for Jalen Duren, for sure. Jalen Duren still was an effective player, but took a step up, right? Malik Beasley was a monster hit. That one did reach about a level as good as you could get. Okay, fair.
Great.
So that's
great
another
bet.
scenario.
It was a great bet.
Yeah, for sure. It was a great bet. Malik Beasley, you don't say that. We can say that. It was a great bet. So Cade and Malik.
And Tobias Harris. So that there was they get Tobias Harris. Everybody goes, what is that? What are they doing? Tobias Harris, great year. So that has to happen for Colin Sexton. I don't think everybody was saying, wow, I can't believe the Hornets made that deal and got what they got. It seemed like they sort of stole Colin Sexton, plus they got some additional draft assets, and people were more confused with Utah. So it's not necessarily the same thing, but it's also like a veteran that people have cast off a little bit and coming over and then revitalizing his career. That would have to happen.
Yeah. So I think Detroit is a good example of everybody just saying, oh, the best case scenario happens for every single player. I don't think that has to be the case. The other team I'll compare him to is, what if we just go back to the last 40-win team in Charlotte when the Hornets won 43 games in 2021, 2022? Like, you could ask for some similar stuff. One, Mason Plumlee starting 73 games. That probably. So there's one. LaMelo reaching an all-star game. Okay, there's something we can hopefully check off. How about having two guys, Doug, that are top 10 in Sixth Man of the Year voting? That's what happened that year. They had Kelly Oubre was 7th, Montrezl Harrell was 9th. Can we get Trey Mann? Can we get Colin Sexton in the top 10 each in Sixth Man of the Year voting? And then, remember, Miles had his jump. Miles Bridges became a 20-point per game scorer. The year prior to that, he was just a 12.7 point per game scorer.
Well, that was the Cody Martin. Was that the Cody Martin year too?
It was. Well, I don't know about the shooting. It probably was
21, 22.
It was the Cody Martin shooting
So
season.
that's the guy that came out of nowhere. It's like, wait a minute, he's almost leading the league in 3-point shooting. I don't know who that player is on this. Maybe it is Collins. Well, I mean, Collins Sexton shoots a good ball. He just doesn't shoot it a lot. So I mean, maybe that's the sort of move. It's like he shoots like 2 more threes per game at similar percentages, and bango.
You know who it is, Doug. It's Josh Green. All he's got to do. All he has to do is
same thing, right? Shoots a good ball, just got to shoot it more.
Yeah. So that's it. That I think there are a lot of similarities that you can point back to for that 2021-2022 team when they won 43 games. Maybe we copy and paste it here, except this time we don't flame out the following season. We actually build upon a 40-win season. Final thoughts, Sicko Satchel time. What are you thinking?
No time for the Sicko Satchel. We'll get to it as we progress through the week, because we did have some really good questions. Join subtext.com/Lockdown Hornets if you want to submit yours now, and we'll get to it here before Media Day. I just want to post-apologize to everyone if I sounded sour at any point in this episode. I got some devastating news from producer Katie, who informed me that Baron Davis is on Dancing with the Stars. That's not the bad news. Baron Davis on Dancing with the Stars. Congratulations. Fun.
Okay.
But when they introduced him, they showed him in a New Orleans Hornets uniform.
As soon as you said
they took everything from me.
You know, I thought maybe what I went to was they announced him as a former Golden State Warrior, and that was going to hurt. But you went to a much darker place in that he had a New Orleans Hornet jersey. You know, the Baron stuff, like I tried to reach out to parties that could get him on the show, and I think he was being honored, was it last year or 2 years ago? But man, we don't get a lot of Baron talking about his days with the Hornets nearly as much. And it just continues to show that era, a really popular team in Hornets lore is weirdly like one of the more under-discussed teams too, despite that being one of the more popular teams, because it was such a weird lame duck type season. When they were good, they won a playoff series, and yet still doesn't matter. They're on up out of here. Like I know we've talked about Baron discussing that, but yeah, that stuff does make me sad. It really does make me sour.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that's why you don't get the discussion about that, because it's so painful and it's so weird because it's split down the middle. Nobody really knows how to talk about it. So, yeah, I mean, Mashburn, Davis, P.J. Brown, Eldon Campbell, hell of a defensive team, very differently built than the team that we're going to see this season. But, yeah, still my favorite team.
You want to know what I want badly? Like, give me an hour and change one-on-one with one of those guys, like a prominent member, interviewing them like that. You talk about just like little podcast / radio dreams. I really want that. Like that. Shoot for the stars.
That sounded like a police interrogation. Just give me 1 hour with this guy.
I'll get a confession. I swear. Don't do it, agent. I can do it. I swear. All right. Send them in. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Also a producer of a brand new, critically acclaimed, awesome Yahoo Sports show, Yahoo Sports Daily, with Jason Fitz and Caroline Fenton. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, not critically acclaimed, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Sports Radio.
I'm a critic, and I acclaim you.
Thank you. Thank you for acclaiming me. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.